most noteworthy founding forefathers, Alexander Hamilton, was quoted as saying that real liberty is neither found in despotism or the extremes of democracy, but in moderate governments. It's imperative that we heed Hamilton's call to moderation in all aspects of our existence, but especially the issue that is at hand today, whether or not Supreme Court justices should continue to be appointed by the President or if they should be elected by the general public. This is indeed a truly important and magnificent issue, one of great significance within our nation today and even in the future. And although it lacks the flash and charisma of other important issues, like abortion, capital punishment, and even the war in Iraq, it is just as significant to the fiber of our federalistic nation. Even though this issue lacks the flair of these words just mentioned, that in no way alludes to its lack of significance. As a matter of fact, it maximizes it even more. The preservation of our federal system as we know it, as it has been for over 200 years, relies on this issue because it was woven into our Constitution by so many of our founding forefathers. This was the way that it was intended to be. For these reasons, and many others that will be discussed, it is imperative that Supreme Court justices should continue to be appointed by the President of the United States and approved of by the U.S. Senate. Currently, the Supreme Court consists of 9 jurists. These individuals that sit on the Supreme Court come from various different judicial branches. As a matter of fact, over the course of our history, they've come from many varied backgrounds. In the 1950s, when President Dwight Eisenhower tapped Earl Warren to be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Warren at the time was the liberal Republican governor of California. As times modernized, we've seen presidents tap justices from federal circuit courts, district courts, and even appellate courts. Justices are taken from a variety of different existing courts. This was not a mandate or a requirement written down in the Constitution. However, one important aspect that was written in the Constitution in regards to the court system is that it is one of 3 very important branches of our government: the judicial, the other 2, namely being the executive and the legislative. Each of these 3 branches has an extremely important role in our federalistic form of government. The judicial interprets the laws, the legislative makes the laws, and the executive that enforces the laws. Each of the 3 branches has specific checks and balances over the next. And it's important that not too many drastic changes be made to this system. Otherwise, it could thwart it and cause further harm. In my opinion, the reversal of the current system that is presently in use could be disastrous. It was the initial intention of the founding forefathers that Supreme Court nominees and eventually justices would be individuals that could transcend partisan politics. These individuals, it was hoped by the founding forefathers, would be ones that could escape the rancorous partisan elections that we see in very often Senate seats, Congress seats, and even sometimes the White House. A common argument for the election of Supreme Court justices is that those justices that are appointed by the President will impose the ideology of that respective president for years to come, even after that president leaves office. This isn't true and it's not practical. No single president has sole authority in selecting a Supreme Court justice. Now, indeed, we all know that they nominate the justice, but many different steps are taken before they even do that. Presidents in the past 100 years have always consulted leaders of both parties, both their own and the party that is out of power. This is a courtesy given to both political parties in care of democracy. In addition to this, presidential picks are not free. They must be confirmed by the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate as a whole. Let's use the example of in the 1930s, when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was passing his New Deal policies. There were several conservative judges on the Supreme Court that did not agree with some of his policies and in fact caused the court to deem them unconstitutional. In response to this, FDR desired to increase the amount of justices from 9 to 14. When he proposed this to Congress, Congress sent back a veto saying, no, you can't do that. This is just one historical example, showing us definitively that the president does not have 100% authority when selecting a Supreme Court justice. In addition to consultation from other party leaders, he has to take into consideration what will be approved of by the Senate, and even nowadays, the intense media scrutiny that candidates will find. We all remember Robert Bork during the 1980s, who received so much scrutiny, he asked President Reagan to withdraw his nomination. It's important for us to remember that Supreme Court nominees are no flippant whim. There are many different thoughts, processes, and ideas that go into the selection of a nominee for a president. It's important for us to always remember, in any type of dealing with the government, any type of dealing with federalism, there are 3 specific branches. And it's important that we not tamper too much with these branches. Something else that we need to take into consideration is trust in our own government. We need to rid ourselves and our nation of the cynicism that has plagued ourselves of our government officials for much so long. Taking into consideration the words of the ancient poet Aeschylus, this for somehow is the true disease of tyranny, to trust no friends. Let us not fall into this trap and trust no one, namely our government leaders. Let us trust them to make appropriate and right decisions, especially in the issue that is at hand.